Today, we're looking at what NFL.com writer Lance Zierlein has to say about Florida Gators draft prospects, and we'll wrap up by talking about this Florida Gators women's basketball team and how they finally did right by Coach Kelly Rae Finley. Only here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and for every listen to the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by RunYourPool. March Madness is here, and with RunYourPool, they have a better way to create your bracket. RunYourPool.com is the premier sports pool hosting service. Happy Wednesday. I am Brandon Olson. Twitter's WNS_Brandon. Written work with Whole9Sports.com. Getting right into Lance Zierlein's thoughts on Florida Gators draft prospects that are at the Combine. So he's got 4 reports out, and we're going to take a look at the player, the grade, the strengths, the weaknesses, the pro comp, if there's one, and if he has any sources say section for the players, then we've got that covered too. First up is Kaiir Elam, and I'm going in grade order. So I didn't go like, oh, offense, defense, whatever. I just went highest grade to lowest grade. So first up is Kaiir Elam, who has a grade of 6.35, which means that he will eventually be a plus starter. So he'll eventually be a good starter. He's got him listed as a low end, or as worst, a corner 3, corner 2, most likely will be his range. But strengths are the ability to mirror routes, which is big for Kaiir Elam. You know, he's gotten that praise as someone who's taller, he's high-waisted, he's got very long arms, but he's pretty good in coverage at flipping his hips and switching with receivers, and he's got the ability to mirror routes like that. And press coverage is another strength that Lance Zierlein listed, and I think that one is very obvious. You know, everybody, when you talk about Kaiir Elam, you talk about his physicality at the line of scrimmage and how he can use those long arms in press coverage and kind of jam up these receivers. And that's a big thing for him, because when you look at scheme-based, a lot of people talk about him playing in a press scheme because he's so good at just disrupting routes as a corner. And if you don't know how difficult that is, it's very difficult. I played corner for a bit, and to say I was bad at press coverage would be probably the biggest understatement ever. I was just god awful playing press. It's incredibly difficult. Timing is very difficult, and getting that strength and that push in there is very difficult. And the ability to squeeze to the sideline is a big plus for Kaiir Elam that Lance has listed also. And I love that, because when you look at playing defense, a lot of times as a corner or a safety, whoever's in deep coverage, you're told the sideline is your friend. Be between your receiver and the sideline, or keep your receiver between you and the sideline. Push them to the sideline, because it's very difficult to make that play if you're running out of space to make that catch. So keeping the receiver between you and the sideline is big. Cutting off that inside, it also means a lot when you get to actually make a play on the ball, because if you're between the ball and the receiver, then that's very difficult. If they've got to throw between you and the sideline, that's very difficult to do for a quarterback. Weaknesses: too handsy. That's something that we've heard so much of. You know, Trevor Sikkema was here for Monday's episode of Locked On Gators, and he was saying the big issue with Kaiir Elam is he's very handsy and grabby, and that hurts a lot, because he said, you know, a quarterback on a 3rd and long could just say, I don't care what it is, I'm throwing at whoever is covered by Kaiir Elam, because maybe he'll commit a penalty there, and then we get a free first down and yardage. So that's a big thing with Kaiir Elam. That's what everybody talks about: his handsiness, his physicality downfield, his grabbiness. It gets called a lot more in the NFL than it does in college. And the lack of effort in run support is something that we hear for corners specifically incessantly. And I'm of the type where I'm not going to hurt a corner if he's not great in run support most of the time. If you're in a cover 2 scheme, I think it's different. I think you've got to be physical in the running game, and you've got to be able to get in there. But if you look at guys like Greedy Williams, who from LSU a couple of years ago, he was killed for a lack of run effort, and it's like, or for a lack of effort in run support. And it's like, I don't think that's that big a deal if that's not something you ask your corners to do. It's like when you talk about a quarterback and you're like, oh, well, he's not super mobile and he's not great if we want to run with him. And it's like, well, if you don't run with your quarterback, does it really matter to fault him for that? So things like that might have been a bad example, but it is what it is at this point, where I don't think that's something that you really fault Kaiir Elam for, unless you need that in your scheme. It's great to have. I don't fault people a ton for it, but I do give bonus points if you are a good run support corner. And the pro comp is Jalen Johnson, who's a Chicago Bears corner. He was a Utah Ute, and I like the comp. Jalen Johnson, someone who stepped in immediately and got good playing time and played as a legitimate starter. Like, he wasn't just like, we suck at corner. No, he earned that spot, and he's been great for the most part as a corner on the outside. So I like the Jalen Johnson comp, and I get it. I see it. I think that's a very good fit, a very sound fit. And then sources say, we've got one for this. The quote is, I just think he got a little lazy with his technique in 2021, but he will be fine. I like him from an area scout. Before I leave it to the NFC team, I think that's fair. A lot of people have complained about him not living up to the hype in 2021, and the tape in 2020 was better. We'll see what he does at the combine, and if he can convince these coaches and these NFL teams that in the NFL, it's going to be very different. I'm going to kick that gear up. Next up is Dameon Pierce, who we all love, running back out of Florida. Grade is 6.29. Eventually an average starter. That's what 6.29 means. The strengths, I love this one. I love putting it down. Grown man, physique, and power. And look, Dameon Pierce is not a hard evaluation. You watch him and you go, ton of power. He can create yardage, but ton of power. Just contact balance through the roof. He's great at that. He's a powerful runner. Vision is a strength that Lance Zierlein has listed, specifically when working the off tackle. So when you're going, if the tackle's got the push to the outside, you cut it in. If the tackle's got the push to the inside, you cut it out. Stuff like that, where, I think that as hard as it was to see with so few carries, Dameon Pierce really showed that in Dan Mullen's system specifically, he could thrive as a runner. And I think that as we move towards more wide zone offenses, that's going to be big. Like I've mentioned, I would like to see Dameon Pierce with the Titans, but if we see him throw him with the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel as their running back, and he's going to be a savage in that scheme. So it'd be great there. The ability to work as a receiver over the middle is another thing that Lance Zierlein has listed. We saw Dameon Pierce literally just go up the seam, over linebackers, between safeties, make plays. I believe it was a Vanderbilt game. He went right up the middle, had a massive gain. And we've seen that while he wasn't asked to do it a ton, he's shown that he can work as a receiver. Weaknesses, this one bothered me, just because I'm like, I don't think this is a weakness. Just 9 games with 10 plus carries. I get that he meant it as we've never seen him really be able to work a full game and see if he can shoulder the load as a lead running back. But I don't think that's a weakness. I think that's more like, I think if you phrase it as a question mark or whatever, then sure. But just 9 games with 10 plus carries, that's a big plus because that's less tread on the tires. Not super shifty. That's fine. Similar to a corner that isn't great in run support. Maybe, Dameon Pierce, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, you're our scat back, buddy. Like that's not his role. So I think that's fine with that. And hand placement and pass protection, I just disagree with. Simply like that. That's one of the biggest weaknesses I drew in reading the report, which is all on NFL.com for all combine participants. You could read it. It's great to see what a pro thinks of these players. But hand placement and pass protection, I just disagree. I think he's a fantastic pass protector. And the pro comp is Isaiah Crowell, which I saw some people like Isaiah Crowell. It's like Isaiah Crowell for a while was a very good running back in the NFL in that running back by committee scheme. So I have no problem with Isaiah Crowell and, a ton of power. And I know a lot of people also say Mike Davis, and that's also a fair one. I haven't worked on comps yet myself, but I will say that Isaiah Crowell isn't a bad one at all for Dameon Pierce. It's the new year, so that means it's New Year's resolution time. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. I'm really bad at keeping my New Year's resolution. Y'all know how I do it. Sweet tooth, baby. That's all me. Every year, that's what it is. It's already coated in 100% chocolate. Most bars have 130 calories and 4 net carbs. Just 4 net carbs, along with 17 grams of protein. So, Built Bar, Thank you. Throw out the hidden stashes, the Reese's in the desk drawer, the Kit Kat in the cupboard. Just get Built Bar. You don't got to sneak around. You don't got to feel bad. And it tastes delicious. Built Bar is always coming out with new limited time flavors, so you'll never get bored of the same old thing. Or if you want the same old thing, keep ordering it. I don't care. It's your stomach, not mine. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your next order. That is locked, LOCKED 15 to get 15% off of your next order at Built or BuiltBar.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Bracket Breakdown on March 14th right here on the Locked On Gators podcast feed and YouTube channel. Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and Lee Sterling give you an in-depth breakdown on every matchup. Will the Gators be there? We'll find out. Looking at Lance Zierlein's report, the final two Gators at the NFL Draft Combine, Zachary Carter, grade 6.2, eventual average starter. So very close grade to Dameon Pierce, which also, Dameon Pierce was way closer to Kaiir Elam than I thought he'd be. Kaiir Elam was 6.35, Dameon Pierce 6.29. That is close. Dameon Pierce is closer to Kaiir Elam than he is to Zachary Carter, according to Lance Zierlein. So that was interesting. Not that I agree or disagree. It was just interesting to me. Eventual average starter in the NFL is Zachary Carter's grade. The strengths that he could play inside and out, we know this. Zachary Carter is arguably the most versatile defensive lineman in this draft. When you look at maybe not in terms of, finesse and power, but in terms of can he play positional versatility. I think that's the biggest thing for Zachary Carter. That's his biggest plus compared to so many other defensive linemen in this draft class. Also, the variety of rush moves. Lance Zierlein lists the bull rush, the rip and dip, the swim, all these moves where Zachary and the pass rush plan is a big thing for Zachary Carter, where he goes into it and he's not stumped if you stop his first move. He's going to just work with a variety of moves to try to shed these blocks. And I think that's big when you look at someone who is going to be asked to move around the line. Certain players, it's like, well, he's a little stiffer as an offensive tackle, and so get around him, get more finessey with it instead of just trying to run through like Trent Brown, instead of trying to run through a just I don't even know mountain of a man. Get around him, and I think Zachary Carter gives you that. Also, power is listed as a big plus because yes, he's not great at getting that edge. In fact, one of his weaknesses is the lack of explosiveness around the edge, but power is a big thing for Zachary Carter. Keeping that or forcing that offensive lineman back and anchoring them, trying to force them to shift their anchor and lose their anchor. That's big for Zachary Carter. Weaknesses, losing footing too much. I'll say the biggest issue with him is the sloppy footwork. He gets sent to the dirt too much, or he gets put on the ground too much, as Lance Zierlein says. But yeah, I believe the exact quote is spends too much time on the ground. But Zachary Carter, I think footwork is a little bit of an issue for him. I think the upper body is fantastic. The lower body, sometimes he gets a little bit like Bambi, and there's a little bit of an issue there. But I think if he can clean that up, we're looking at a maybe not high level starter, but an above average starter. Inconsistent motor is an issue too, which again, that's a thing that it happens with a lot of guys. They get a little tired and it's hard to be like, I'm going to go full go right here. It's difficult to keep that up. And I also agree. Yes, that is a big negative for me. At that point, I'd rather say, take yourself off the field at that point if you're not going to be a full go. Just I don't get how you can have an inconsistent motor. I'm again, sorry to bring back to my very bad playing days, but I'm someone who's full go every time. You've got to just keep going, click that second gear. And Zachary Carter, we're kind of waiting to see that. And like I said, lacks explosiveness around the edge is a thing. He doesn't have a ton of bend with him, but I think he's going to be working more head up with a tackle or working inside the tackles. The pro comp is Adrian Claiborne, which is, a big, powerful pass rusher who had some very high spots in his career. Sources say he's going to be at different positions depending on the team and scheme, which we knew. But in a perfect world, I see him as a 5 wide or wide 5. And that was a little interesting to me because wide 5 means that he's going to be lined up outside the offensive tackle. He's going to be on that outside shoulder of the offensive tackle. So if he's going up against a left tackle, he's going to be outside that left shoulder. If he's going to be on the right tackle, he's going to be outside that right shoulder. And I kind of view him very differently. Like I just said, I view him as head up with the tackle or inside the tackles. I wouldn't put him on the edge. I don't think that's where you put him because we've spoken about it. He doesn't have a ton of bend. He doesn't have a ton of explosiveness on the end, where I think he's much more suited to working against guards and working on the interior of tackles. So I disagree with it, but that guy gets paid much more than I do to talk about and evaluate players. So c'est la vie. Jeremiah Moon is the last player to talk about. There's not a ton on Jeremiah Moon here. It's at a 5.68 grade, which is bottom of the roster or practice squad. A lot of people that I've seen are very low on Jeremiah Moon. And I think a big part of that is, Todd Grantham and Dan Mullen moving him from edge to inside linebacker, which I understand to an extent because it's like, well, there's so much edge talent, but they did it with Mahmoud Diabate. They don't do a good job of developing these linebackers, so it's just dumb to move them from edge to inside linebacker. And Florida, I mean, they did it to Jeremiah Moon. They did it to Mahmoud Diabate. That's part of the reasons he left, I believe. But the strengths are length. He doesn't miss many tackles once he gets a ball carrier in his grasp, it said. So it's not just like in his sight. Once he gets them, very rare is it that they actually shed his tackle. And ability as an interior pass rusher, specifically his spin move, is big because I mentioned Jared Davis a few days ago, where I like his ability as an interior pass rusher in the sense of you send him to the A gap, but you don't show it. You just blitz him from where he is. And I think Jeremiah Moon can find a role there, but I still would. And I know Trevor Sikkema spoke about this on Monday, and I agree with him. I'd rather just see him go back to edge and be a situational pass rusher who can drop back every now and then. But it's not going to work for him to be an off-ball linebacker the entire time. Weaknesses, the lack of instincts, which, look, again, he just moved to off-ball linebacker. Yes, he lacks instincts. That's going to be a thing. Block shedding ability in terms of whether it's pass rushing or run stopping, I agree. He's got a lot of work to do. Jeremiah Moon is not this sure product. He's not a finished product at all. And the 3 season-ending injuries in college were a big thing for Jeremiah Moon. But again, he's not someone who, he's not a low floor player. He's got a pretty high ceiling, I think, but he's also got a very low floor, and he's gonna go day 3 or undrafted because of it. If he could blow up the combine, that'd be great for him. But we'll see where it is. And there was no pro comp provided for him because I get it. It's very hard to move edge a linebacker, get 1 year tape, and be like, this is who this player reminds me of. That's very hard to do. So I fully understand that. March Madness is just a few weeks away. That means you need to start thinking now about where you're running your brackets this year. And if you want to be smart about it, RunYourPool.com is the place to be. Along with standard brackets, they got Pick'em, Survivor. It's stuff you won't find on ESPN or CBS. And when you use RunYourPool.com, you'll be able to set your bracket with me and the Locked On Gators listeners for free, which I'll get set up in a little bit. Join the whole network at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And if you want to set up your own pool for friends, family, business, whatever purpose, I don't care. Whatever you do, it's your money. Use promo code PUREMADNESS at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. Runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize for free. Free to sign up, free to use. Only got to pay if you start your own bracket. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, I mean, it's impossible to just know. My brother got a new car. All I know is it's a Compass. That's it. I don't know the year, any variation to it, none of that. And if people want to ask me questions about my car, none of that. You can either come out or I will look it up. That's how we're going to do it. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home in your pocket. Don't go to those local chain stores. Save time and money when you use Rock Auto. Go explore their easy-to-use website where even I could use it. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on under How You Hear About Us box, so they know exactly who sent you. With amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. First things first when talking about this women's basketball team, because this is something that I've been saying for a long time at this point, and I've been clamoring for it and asking for it incessantly, and now we can finally say it. Kelly Rae Finley, the interim head coach of the Florida Gators women's basketball team, can drop the interim. She has been named the Florida Gators women's basketball coach. Thank the Lord. full-time head coach. She has agreed to a 5-year deal with the university. I have not seen any financial numbers on the deal yet. I hope that they backed up the Brinks truck for her because she is just phenomenal. The team went 20-9 this season and 10-6 in the SEC. And I don't think it's possible to overstate just how impressive this regular season was under Kelly Rae Finley. I get it. You could say whatever you want about the talent we have and the schedule, whatever you want to say. This was phenomenal. This was a tough schedule. I don't care about the very beginning of the season and how it was a rough start. If anything, that makes it that much more impressive that once this team got their footing, they became freaks. So I think you look at it was one of the best Florida Gators women's basketball seasons in history and one that I've ever seen. And when you consider everything that this team went through, you look at Kelly Rae Finley getting in the interim in July. That was not a lot of time to prepare for the season after that. You look at Lavender Briggs. She got injured, and then she transferred. I don't think you could have possibly asked for more than we got from this Florida Gators women's basketball team. Today, Vanderbilt and Texas A&M are playing at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're listening to this in the afternoon, we probably know who Florida's playing tomorrow. But Florida takes on the winner of that game tomorrow afternoon following the Missouri-Arkansas game. The Missouri and Arkansas game starts at noon. Florida and the winner of Vanderbilt and Texas A&M will play 25 minutes after the conclusion of that game. So that's going to be big. This SEC tournament is huge. I can't wait for it. And if Florida happens to beat the winner of Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, Florida will take on Ole Miss on Friday, which then they'd play the winner of the other part of the bracket. And that's how brackets work. But looking at the individual success of this team as well, Kiki Smith. Sheesh, this team. First team all SEC for Kiki Smith. SEC all defensive team for Kiki also. She averaged 14.9 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 4.6 assists per game, 2.4 steals per game on 41.7% shooting. 26.6% from three is not amazing, but I feel like I've been saying it this entire season. I mentioned the big three that Florida had with Kiki Smith, Jordan Merritt, and Lavender Briggs, who's of course no longer with the Gators. But Kiki Smith she's been our Oklahoma City Russell Westbrook. She's the Renaissance woman, man. Like Kiki Smith is a do-it-all player who plays just like her hair is on fire every damn game. She's phenomenal, and she will be sorely missed as a Florida Gator. But it ride ain't over yet, so hopefully we still got some more there. Next is Alberta Rimdahl, who's the SEC all-freshman team, averaged 5 points per game, 1.1 rebounds per game, and 1.1 assists per game. And I know that those numbers seem small. They do. They seem small, but you also have to consider the majority of college women basketball players are upper-class women because that's how that's how college basketball works for women, where you're going to be here for 4 years before going to the WNBA. And with Alberta Rimdahl, they seem small, but she's a freshman that got inconsistent playing time throughout the season. And she had inconsistent involvement in the offense throughout the season, where she's someone who I mentioned once this Gators team got their footing, they became lethal. Once Alberta Rimdahl gets her footing under her, she's going to be lethal. Like next year, you could say. Next year, I would not be shocked if she... Actually, next year, I'd be shocked if she wasn't in the 10 to 12 points per game range. And she could easily surpass that because she's got the ratty from three. So she could easily surpass that. But 10 to 12 points per game would be like the minimum expectation for me for her next year. And like you could look at games like Alabama, Kentucky, and Auburn in just mid-January. I believe it was Alabama the 13th of January, Auburn January 16th, and Kentucky January 20th, if I'm not mistaken. And she showed that she could catch fire in a hurry, and she played a huge part in those wins. Sure, you can look at the Kentucky game and say, she had 15 or whatever it was. I believe it was 17, 15, 14. So you could say, sure, she had 15. And it was a game where Florida won by 22 or 25. But that's still playing a huge part in that win. And Alabama and Auburn, we don't win if Rendell doesn't have the game that she had, because both of those games were games where it's like the rest of this team, little questionable at certain points, but she was just letting it fly from three. And even when Kiki Smith got hurt late in the game last week, Rendell came in to take the free throws for her. She's so clutch at the line. So Alberta Rendell against LSU is just very bright future. Like sophomore, junior, senior year, I cannot wait to see what she's going to do for the Florida Gators, and she's going to help build this nucleus that the Gators have. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more about our Florida Gators. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices, which is honestly my favorite part about that. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports. That is WHOLENINE Sports. And I will see you all tomorrow.